Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spincast. Today, we're diving back into the world of collegiate esports. Joining me is Max Wood, who is the esports coach at Converse University. Thank you, Max, for joining me today. Real quick, give me a background of your background in esports and how you got started in this space and kind of how that journey led you to where you are currently as the esports coach at Converse University.
Absolutely. So I guess the very beginning was I loved League of Legends as a player, and back when Riot had their Challenger series and it was promotion and relegation, I was a big player in that, and I hosted my own team and paid my own team and really kind of got engaged in the market. Then kind of worked my way up the ladder. Got an opportunity to move out to the West Coast, but as a 19-year-old kid on the East Coast, parents said no to that. So ended up going to college, getting the degree, getting the minor, and then right out of college said, "Hey, I'm just going to make a ton of money." Got into corporate accounting,
Mm-hmm.
and realized I hated it with a passion. And I took a dream job out on the West Coast for esports, and then 2019 hit. I kind of got the opportunity to show my skill set, and it's been kind of history ever since then.
Awesome. Great success story. I was pretty much in the same boat too. On a relating note, I was really good at math in high school. So my teachers were like, hey, go do engineering. Went to NC State, did engineering. After my freshman year, I was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. Absolutely hated it. I didn't make it all the way through college and get to the professional ones. I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not doing this. And now I find myself in esports and I absolutely love what I do. I really don't view work as work. I'd rather actually be in my office than really anywhere else most of the time, day or night. But kind of jumping into your program a little more closely, tell me about, Converse, the esports program there in general. What games do you guys play? What do you compete in? Just give me that snapshot overall of the program.
Yeah, so we're actually in a really unique situation. So the program actually doesn't launch till fall 2021.
Okay.
So I've been hired about a year in advance with plenty of time to actually sit down with admin, kind of set the culture, set the expectations all in advance, and then recruit for my class, my very first class.
Mm-hmm.
So a blessing, really in disguise here, and time and energy can be spent on kind of the stuff behind the scenes that kind of gets overlooked when you're given, a two-month period of time to recruit a full class, right?
Yeah.
So, the program right now, at a bare bones level, we expect to have, League of Legends, Rocket League, Overwatch, kind of the big three, and then
Sure.
a big focal on League of Legends as a whole, just because it's, a powerhouse, in the collegiate space. We're actually looking at kind of, breaking some barriers, including some games that we expect to be collegiate sports. So like Halo is absolutely going to, make a comeback, which is, as an old head, I'm super happy about.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I think Call of Duty is also going to be a big esport moving forward. And so we're kind of trying to, have the foundational pillars of collegiate esports, and then also have some new games in there that might make a big impact on the space here within the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. The question of, what games to recruit for is something that we always kind of look at as a recruiting platform, right? Of, what should we kind of be gearing our leagues for? What league should we be running in those games? And it's kind of, sometimes it's kind of a guessing game, right? Obviously, we're looking at Call of Duty and Halo next year of like, wow, this is going to be awesome. We wish that Halo didn't say yesterday that it was going to be fall 2021. Sadly, the rumor on the street was February. From some other sources, but sadly they're like, yeah, no, it's gonna be the fall. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're gonna wait a whole nother year for this game. I used to play a ton of Halo back in the day, so I really want it back, and I could see it becoming a really popular esport, like you said. Same with Call of Duty. I think they actually got it really right with Cold War. So I'm excited to see where that kind of ends up in the spring, and it's gonna be interesting when the next title comes out, right? Do they stick with Cold War? What does that look like down the road? But awesome. Kind of diving into that recruiting process, because that's probably the centric kind of time sink right now is, okay, who am I going to recruit? How am I going to recruit? So take me through that process in your eyes of what you've been doing. What platforms have you looked towards to get these recruits for the big pillars, and then also those, fringe games, fringe games, up and coming games as you look to, fully launching next fall.
Yeah, so I guess my process has been kind of traditional in a sense of it's almost like I'm building out a staff for like a tier one organization. So I focused on staff and individuals I can trust with advanced knowledge and advanced understanding in these particular titles, and bringing those individuals in and listening to their opinions, and really kind of getting as much knowledge from them as possible. So once I've kind of developed the staff, of individuals that I can trust, we've then kind of been branching out and trying to understand like where students are congregating, right? And so one thing that's been a pleasant surprise since I've been back into the U.S. is kind of the development of the high school space. And
Mhm.
so finally, there's state leagues. Like I'll be real with you, my biggest fear coming into the collegiate space was there's not going to be any information on high school esports, right? And I'm going to have to primarily battle with big colleges in the transfer market, where we have kids who are just kind of bouncing between colleges and they're looking for the highest scholarship they can get.
Mhm.
So I'm super excited that our focus has been on high school leagues. Like we've been looking at, there's a state league in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and Illinois, and we're kind of diving into Nebraska now. And so we've been using kind of local entities and local scouters is I guess the traditional term to
Mhm.
kind of help dive into the big pool of kids who are playing at the state level and trying to kind of sift through what has been good players and what are key factors in what makes a good esport athlete. And then we found Plugged In, and I'll be honest with you, it's been a dream come true regarding kind of helping us sift a larger group of high schoolers in kind of identifying what might be a good fit for us come fall 2021.
Absolutely. No, that's our entire mission, is to find that best fit, right? And we say that very strongly. It's not just in the game skills, it's also outside the game skills. And that leads me to my next question of, when you're looking at players, what's the most important factors, right? Obviously, you have to be good enough in game to play collegiately at that highly competitive level. But what else do you look for in these high school players that really makes them enticing, so to say, to get and more recruitable?
Sure. So, if you would have asked me this a year ago before I, traveled the world for esports, I would have said, just skill level. As the ex-accountant, I would have just given you a simple answer like, hey, if they can shoot straight or they can click buttons fast, then that's the answer. Kind of getting to know kids abroad and see kind of the cultures and how it impacts their livelihood and impacts their chances of being successful. I think above all, it's passion. I think that seeing how different these different cultures and these different kids have all different pathways to competing at the professional level. At the high school level, if they're just passionate about what they do and they're passionate about being in esports, they're going to find a home. And like you said, maybe that's not at the professional level, maybe that's not playing, but if they're passionate about it and they love what they do, then there's tons of opportunities at the collegiate level, whether it's being a coach or whether it's being a mentor, or maybe it's just being an advisor for a university. So there's tons of opportunities, but I think it all kind of delves back to, do you love esports? Do you want to be in it every single day? Are you crazy about it? So I think that's kind of the biggest aspect that I look for.
Exactly. If you wake up with that drive and passion and desire, it's really easy to keep grinding and keep getting better, right? Trying to find alternate routes to increase your gameplay, increase your communication skills, so on and so forth. Because that's what drives everybody, right? It's the same thing with me. I wake up with that passion to make the company better, to make the platform better for these high school students. And that's what drives me to be better every single day, right? So absolutely agree with you on that. Kind of going back just a little bit, you talked about these state federations, right? Which I've seen them pop up, obviously, been looking at them closely, and they're kind of sprinkled everywhere, right? Some states even might have 2 or 3 different variations. So take me through that scouting process, right? Because that interests me from that recruiting process, because it's kind of a traditional mindset, right? Which is good. Right? I always say we should look at traditional sports because they get a lot of things right. Obviously, things have to be different because it is esports. But the scouts have been a very prevalent recruiting tool for a lot of traditional sports, if not all of them. So take me through kind of how that process works, for how you communicate with these scouts, and how they kind of give you, their information back so you can accurately judge all of these kids from these various state leagues and federations.
Absolutely. So the great news about that is that it's kind of so just like how with traditional sports have good scouts and they have bad scouts, it's really on based upon the quality of the individual that you trust to get that information. And so everyone that we've kind of chosen has a significant background either in the professional scene or has been hanging around that tier 2 level for a significant amount of time. So, I don't want to call it Moneyball, but, the scouts at Moneyball who were talking about, oh, well, this guy has this right swing, or, this guy can throw left handed,
Mhm.
having that level of intellect and knowledge about what, makes a player tick pandemic has really been vital in all of it. We're actually trying to create kind of a basic system, like a star system, kind of how similar like Max Preps and ESPN does for their high school athletes. And so we're currently trying to create almost just like a data sheet that allows us to numerically evaluate players, but right now it's still very opinion based.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're hoping here in the next 2 years we gather enough data that we can kind of go back to a traditional max prep star system to
Mhm.
kind of help maybe non-endemic coaches and staff understand high schoolers a little bit more, because I know that many colleges don't have access to either the flexibility to have scouts or the flexibility to have this data. So to kind
Yeah.
of help, other programs, we're hoping to kind of create and push the star system publicly to help, one, help high schoolers understand their value, and two, maybe help non-endemic, maybe admissions understand the value of the high schoolers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. And like right now in esports, like you said, it's difficult because even from a statistics base, it's really hard to identify what statistics matter, right? It's kind of an old trope like KD doesn't really matter at some level, right? Obviously, if you have a point one KD, you're probably not too good. But KD is really hard to gauge a player, right? Once you're kind of in that, 1.0 to 1.5 range where most competitive players, kind of lie in most FPS titles, it's like, okay, well, just because I have a 1.3 and you have a 1.31 doesn't necessarily mean you're the better player. So totally agree there. If you can figure out that system, that's one of those like, almost impossible problems in esports right now of like what stats matter, how do they affect each other, how do they operate in different roles across different titles, whether you're a support or a fragger at a core difference, and then everything in between, especially for games like Overwatch and League that have more roles outside of that as well. So awesome. Staying on the note of high schools, in the state federations, what I've noticed, obviously we're based out of Charlotte, and y'all are in our backyard. The Carolinas haven't quite bought into esports. It's here and there, some cities, some not so much, not near as much. Georgia has a ton of high schools involved in it. So does Virginia, but we're kind of sandwiched in between. There's not a whole lot there, not near as many opportunities. So question one is, why do you think that is? Question two, what do you think we could do to start to change that, both from the collegiate level and then also from that recruiting aspect as well?
I think it all kind of comes back to education. I'm in the middle of Kansas right now, and I'll be honest with you, it's the understanding that South Carolina may be a little bit underdeveloped for esports is an understatement for Kansas, right?
Yeah.
So it's e-gamers out here. It's not even esports. So
Okay.
the goal I think is to just kind of relay information, because like esports is no longer a fledgling industry. We have enough data. We've been around long enough. We have the money to prove it. I think that people just need to take a look at what is actually happening.
Mhm.
And that's what I think I'm most excited about, is because kind of getting to go to a state that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure or education. There's an opportunity to educate. There's an opportunity to share information. There's an opportunity to get people excited, because looking at esports is exciting. So I just value it as a challenge, and I'll be honest with you, I'm just looking forward to get back to the East Coast. It's been a long time since I've been able to get back, and the East Coast mindset may be a little bit challenging, but I'll take it over the Midwest any day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say we're a little more busy over here in the East Coast than the Midwest. There's like two big cities out there, maybe. But I love the city life and everything. So obviously, I want to stay in the East Coast. On that note, but kind of going from high school to college, obviously, is that recruiting aspect, right? And that's kind of what we've done. And obviously, you've kind of heard the whole spiel of the recruiting platform and whatnot that we're building at Stay Plugged In and maintain right now, more on that manual side. But obviously we want to be the best of the best of the best. We want to be, when someone thinks, hey, I want to go to college, for esports to play whatever game, they think, okay, I'm going to go to staypluggedin.com. I'm going to go to espin.gg, either or, both go to the same site. Um, Take me through kind of in your eyes what that well-rounded student is, right? So what aspects, can we identify, right, to make it easier for the recruiters so you can log on, see a player's page profile, be able to talk to them, and everything's kind of right in front of you that you would want to see so you can make the most accurate decision that you make, for your program.
Sure. So a very tough question. But I think the kind of the key attributes that are easy to identify, of course, would be GPA. That is kind of the golden number right now for collegiate.
Mm.
And then I think that something interesting that would always be, of value, I think, is number of missed classes, which is information that a school does track. And I think that, having that data up front, because a kid can still pass or still get a good grade, but what is he doing in school? Like what classes is he attending? Is he missing classes on a regular basis? That is going to have a direct correlation at the collegiate level. It's going to cause a coach, maybe a new coach or a veteran coach, a hard time if he's not going to class, if he's not attending class. Now, sure, he's passing, but if he's missing, 60% of his classes, then my God, there's an issue or a potential issue with that. And then I think on top of that, I think another key attribute that would be, a really fun thing to track would be, involvement in other sports. And I think that there's this big focus on esports and your KDA and your rank in esports. Being a well-rounded athlete and understanding the space and understanding what it's like to play on a team, I think kind of holds a significant level of value at the collegiate level, because it is, a team aspect. It's still a team community.
Sure.
And so, understanding if a potential recruit has played other sports is a very big facet, because at a base level know that they understand a team atmosphere, they understand a coaching hierarchy, they understand the basics that maybe you would have to teach someone who hasn't had traditional sports in their background, maybe in high school or middle school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, it speaks to that well-roundedness, right? And that also speaks to, like, okay, what's their work ethic like? What's their dedication? Can they balance time, right? Because we all know that transitioning from high school as a student to college as a student, regardless if you play esports or any athletics or any clubs or any competition, it doesn't matter. Just that route transition is very difficult, right? You have to all of a sudden manage your time on your own, manage stress on your own, figure out when you're going to eat, right? Try to follow something of a normal sleep schedule, and balance all of that with your social life and in all the clubs or competitions, esports, athletics, and whatnot that you are partaking in. So being able to kind of accurately convey that already at the high school level, right, is invaluable, because then you know that they already at its core have those base skill set that they can take and kind of build on in college. So I absolutely agree with you. That's definitely something that I think everyone wants to know. It really helps the program. Kind of going on to my next question, is looking at the collegiate esports scene in general. Obviously, super big right now. Some news came out today that Tespa is dropping out of the scene.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be excited to see what that means for the Activision Blizzard world. But where do you see the collegiate esports scene trending to? Right, I always ask this question because everyone it always comes up as the NCAA. Right, what's their involvement going to be? Are they going to be involved? Do we want them to be involved? But where do you see the scene kind of transitioning to? And in your opinion, what's that best place that collegiate esports could end up, in say the next 2 to 3 years?
So a great question. I'm actually glad that I got to experience a little bit of collegiate esports here in Kansas, with the KCAC, which is an athletic conference here in Kansas, who is kind of budding and creating their own esports conference for their local colleges that are also affiliates of their traditional, sports conference. And so, getting a little bit of insight about them and their process and all of that, I got firsthand knowledge of like what these athletic conferences are viewing esports as and how they value it and how kind of interested they are. It's probably going to sound like an unpopular opinion, but I think that as we continue to grow, because it's just a massive budding industry, we're
Hmm.
going to need the NCAA to step in. And I know that irks a lot of esports people, and I think that there's this stigma here in the U.S. that we want esports to be different, we want it to be better, we want it to be our own thing, right? We want it to be ours, because for the longest period of time we weren't accepted by anyone, right?
Hmm.
And so there's that big stigma, but coming from traditional sports, we need a real governing body, right? We need a real governing body that has a real board of actual athletic individuals to kind of help support us and push us in the right direction as a whole. And I think that the NCAA also adds a lot of legitimacy that we desperately need to push these larger D1 schools into the esports space.
Hmm.
So I do think there's a give and take here where, sure, we do sacrifice, being the special kid and being the new sport. But I think that we also gain a whole lot of new colleges that would normally look at esports and say, oh, we have football making $3 million a year. Why would we ever do esports,
Hmm.
So I certainly see the NCAA reviewing, I think, their previous decision, which was to stay hands off, just by how much we've grown over the past 2 years. I think that it's just the information is so damning that, you know, even individuals who grew up in an age without internet look at these numbers and say, wow, how can we not want to be involved in that growth? And
Yeah.
so I certainly think the NCAA will review it, and I think eventually they will, ingrain it and accept it into, the official, sports, regime world
Mhm.
of collegiate.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you there on a number of those points. It is a numbers game at the end of the day, right? When you look at Twitch viewership in collegiate esports, it's almost a no brainer even this year, right? In COVID, that the NCAA would be like, yeah, those numbers are pretty good. I kind of want a piece of that pie, right? And then also, I think something like either the NCAA or something similar provides is structure, right? Everyone knows college football Saturday, right? Everyone knows that collegiate football takes place on Saturday. Primetime games, all of that, ABC, NBC, all the networks are involved, ESPN, obviously. That's kind of the biggest thing that I see lacking in collegiate esports is there's no centric place to go to get that information at the core, right? There's not really a centric place to go to watch those games, right? Obviously, Twitch houses a lot of those streams, but across what, maybe 10,000 different channels.
Right.
Even then, all the different TOs overlap, right? You have TESPA going on, same time CRL is going on, same time NACE is going on, and then the ECAC, and then everything kind of along that as well, right? It's like, okay, I don't really know what's happening, right? This team is successful but then they also lost in round one of that competition. So are they bad or are they good? Uh,
Exactly.
so it's like that structure that kind of will really kind of develop those lines. And also with that structure comes the big schools, right? The ones that have been hands off, like the Power Five schools, Alabama, right? There will be like, yeah, our football team's awesome. We also want the best League of Legends team now, right? They have the money to kind of just pour into it and do it. So I absolutely see that, being a very important, right? How do we find that structure, right? And if the NCAA is the answer, then so be it. But I think that structure is that root cause that you were getting at there. So totally agree on that. Um, so kind of my final question before we do wrap up, because we have been going for a decent bit of time here, is after, our entire discussion about recruiting and everything that you've been involved in and hear about Stay Plugged In, what are your most favorite parts of the platform first? And then second, what do you think that we could do better to really make this platform, that one-stop shop for all high school recruits?
Yeah, no, I talked with a couple of your guys about this. I think that you guys are providing enough information to collegiate coaches. I don't think there's anything additional you guys need to add. I think it's just getting more kids involved in the platform, and that's going to come with time.
Yeah.
So, if you guys have a time machine, we go in the future for, 2 to 3 years, then I think you guys certainly are on the right track to becoming the one-stop shop. I guess the only thing, and that's like a wish list thing, is kind of helping standardize opinions on kids and maybe implementing a star system like what Max Preps does, or creating some sort of value-based system that allows maybe lesser knowledgeable coaches, maybe new coaches that are being hired to maybe smaller schools. It allows them to properly evaluate the kids as well, which empowers the coaching staff, and it empowers the individual and the people that they get hired, or excuse me, that the universities hire to run their program. So a star system, or maybe a number system out of 100, something along those lines, to really kind of help, empower coaches and empower programs to kind of feel proud in recruiting, and to help them kind of, maybe push more money towards recruiting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in the process of designing that system, really. We call it the voltage meter, right? And basically, it's comprised of how good you are in game, right? So your gameplay skills, a thing we call esports skills. So, can you cast? Can you be a video editor? Can you produce? Can you stream, right? Those very tangible skills that really help the programs out, because we all know that esports at its core, the face of it's content, right? How do you develop good content? Use that for promotional, use that for marketing, use that for your own streams. Within the university and within the conference that you play in is super important, right? So there's esports skills, and then also the intangibles, right? So the things I talked about earlier: are they a good kid? Their academics, right? Are they well-rounded? Do they have that time management skills? And we kind of do that by really looking at how they participate in our leagues a number of different ways and internally verify that. So that's coming. I'd be super excited. So we can kind of streamline that process of like, hey, this is, their check marks for, gameplay, and then so on and so forth. So super awesome there. Totally agree. Can't wait to see it all tie together soon as our platform continues to launch. But that is kind of going to kind of do it today. That is all the time we have for the podcast. So Max, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on a Spincast with me and talk about collegiate esports and recruiting amongst a lot of other topics as well. Real quick, if you will, go ahead and plug Converse College. Tell us where we can keep up to date on you guys, any social media platforms if they exist, or if you're still building them. Tell me where we can just keep up to date as y'all's program continues to build and then launch into next year.
Yeah, so right now we don't even have a Twitter page because brand new. But if you go on Twitter and follow our athletics page, which is at Valkyrie _ sports, they have all tons of information about all the new sports that we're adding. And since we're going co-ed, there's tons of exciting news about the first class of male athletes on campus as well. So it's definitely an interesting page to follow and keep track of.
Awesome. Everyone go ahead and do that because I'm super excited to see your program continue to develop and launch into next school year because I think it's going to be something incredible to say the least. But for all our viewers and listeners, thanks for staying the entire time. Stay healthy and stay happy out there. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and ultimately stay plugged in.